In today's video, we continue on with our NHL season preview series, and we look at the Colorado Avalanche, last year's Stanley Cup winner, as they prepare to defend their championship in the upcoming 22-23 NHL season. Can they go back-to-back? We'll discuss the possibility coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, today we're continuing our season preview series, and we're looking at the Stanley Cup champion Colorado Avalanche. In case you're new to this series, quick rundown on how these videos are structured. We do a quick recap of the 21-22 season, take a look at how things went, analyze some team stats, look at recent playoff history. Then we're going to take a look at how the team has changed, any other big moves the team has completed throughout the year, take a look at prospects that might have an impact on the roster this year, and then look at the projected lineup and discuss the potential results and how I think they're going to do this year. So let's first recap last year, which we know was phenomenal for the Avalanche. Of course, they finished first in their division, first in the Central with a record of 56-19-7, 119 points, scored 312 goals for third best in the league. They were an absolute force all year. They gave up 234 for seventh best, so top 10 in both those categories. Generally is a must to be a cup champion. Power play was phenomenal at 24%. PK was the only part of their game that was average at 79.7 for 15th best. Of course, they went on to make the playoffs and win the Stanley Cup for the first time in a long time, but the first time with this current core group. Of course, they've made the playoffs for the last 5 years consecutively. They had a hard time getting past round two, often losing to teams like Vegas a couple of times. They got over that hump and went all the way last year, winning the Stanley Cup. Of course, it was a major accomplishment. They've been working at this for a while. Of course, their head coach is Jerard Fagerberg, who's been there for 7 years. The first year was basically when they really bottomed out. Bednar's first year as head coach, the Avalanche were absolutely horrendous, and a lot of people were calling for him to be fired, but Joe Sakic knew that it really wasn't his fault. He really had to stick with them and make some roster changes that they started to do, and they went on, and here we are all this time later being, 5 consecutive years in the playoffs and a cup champion. Of course, Bednar was hired after Patrick Waugh departed the team late into the offseason after some disagreements on personnel, and you could call it control issues if you want, between him and Sakic. Sakic himself has been with the team now for about 9 years. He is now the team president. That was also an offseason move where he took the higher role as president and promoted Chris MacFarland from assistant GM to general manager. Chris MacFarland was one of the highly sought after, more respected AGMs across the league and had lots of interest from other teams to hire him. I think they knew if they were going to keep him in the organization that they had to make it worth his while and give him a promotion, and certainly made sense. And I'm not sure Joe Sakic, to be honest, really ever wanted to be the GM. I think he ended up being really good at it, but in the beginning, I think he kind of took the job more out of necessity than anything else. I don't know if it was something he set out in his goals to do, but it certainly worked out quite well, and now he's able to be more of a figurehead. Of course, let's take a look now at how the team has changed through the offseason and some other big moves. Before they made any major changes this year, they did get some big names signed to stay with the team, including Valeri Nichushkin, who signed a long-term contract. He was an absolute beast in the playoffs, and they were also able to re-sign and keep Josh Manson, who they picked up at the NHL trade deadline, which I think a lot of people thought wasn't really anywhere near but a given. Obviously, there was some cap gymnastics that had to be done to keep Manson, and if he was going to stay, somebody else had to go. But they also were able to bring in players through free agency like Evan Rodriguez, who they picked up on a fairly cheap deal considering what he did in Pittsburgh last year. Also brought in Lucas Sedlak, made Alexander Georgiev the new goaltender of the, I guess you could say the present, who's going to be the starter. Brad Hunt also joins the team, and he's going to be probably more of a call-up option out of the minor leagues, but a veteran guy who can be relied upon in a third-pair role, especially if need be. As far as who's left, they did lose some key pieces of the championship team, including starting goaltender Darcy Kemper, who was able to cash in off that and go to Washington. Nazem Kadri, who there certainly was interest in the Avs to keep him. Kadri ended up going to the Flames on a 7-year, $7 million per year deal. So 7 times 7 for Naz, which is just something the Avs couldn't quite do. And Andrei Burakovsky left to go to Seattle. Nicholas Aubé-Kubel is now with the Leafs. Jack Johnson's in Chicago. And, of course, Ryan Murray wasn't retained either. So, obviously, some significant subtractions there, especially between Kadri, who had a career season, Darcy Kuemper, who was their starting goaltender, and Burakovsky, who was a pretty consistent scorer over the last few years. He was there. As far as prospects go that could impact their roster this year, well, it's finally looking more promising. A guy like Martin Kaut might be able to get in and get a more of a regular role this year. Ben Myers looks like he's going to have a shot at a roster spot as well. Some players like Sampo Ranta, Shane Bowers, I don't know if they won't be there to start the year, but to me they could see NHL time throughout the year, depending on how injuries go and whatnot. But I do think they do have some more young talent kind of getting in the mix a little bit more. So now let's take a look at what their projected lineup is to start the year. Of course, they're not going to be with captain Gabriel Landeskog, who will be out for the first part of the season. We don't have an exact timeline on his injury, but he was dealing with some injuries that basically came towards the end of the playoffs last year, and as the start of the year has not fully recovered. All we really heard, the last I heard any comments was Jared Bednar saying that he wouldn't be skating for some time, so I'm not sure exactly when that will start for him. But your top line will be centered by Nathan MacKinnon, likely flanked by Mikko Rantanen and Arturi Lehkonen. Your number 2 center likely should be Alex Newhook to start the year, and he will be joining him on the wings likely will be Evan Rodriguez and Valeri Nichushkin. Of course, Landeskog will be in that top 6 once he is ready to go, and he could even play center if need be if Newhook is struggling. So I would suspect that we'll see a shakeup there once he comes in for sure. Just a matter of who moves down, depends on who's playing the best, I guess. Your third line is likely going to be JT Compher, Logan O'Connor, and Ben Myers. And I think your fourth line will likely be a combination of Andrew Cogliano, Lucas Sedlak, possibly Martin Kaut. I believe Darren Helm might be injured to start the year. Helm will likely be on that line now once he's able to play. I don't know if he'll necessarily be a regular every single game. They could rotate the youngster in there more, so we'll see on that. I'm not sure the exact status of Helm's health as I record this video. On the blue line, back end, of course, Devon Toews, Cale Makar, arguably the best duo in the league. Bowen Byram and Josh Manson, and Sam Girard and Eric Johnson. And then you've got Alex Georgiev and Pavel Francouz between the pipes. So can this team repeat? I think it's possible. I mean, it's not easy, as we've seen. It's extremely difficult in today's NHL to do that, but it has been done, and it can be done, and they could certainly be a team to do it again. I have no doubt. We saw the Penguins do it. We've seen the Lightning do it. I think it's fair to say that a question mark between the pipes for sure. Georgiev has not yet been a starting goaltender, so can he be the guy and play a bigger workload and still give you good results? The Avalanche did prove last year that you don't need elite level goaltending to win a Stanley Cup. Darcy Kuemper was good, but he was not great. Even in the playoffs, had some games where he gave up some leaky goals, in my opinion, and there was a few games they won despite of Kuemper. They play such a tight puck possession game that they can protect their goalies more than your average team, and they won't be exposed if they're not quite as strong as some of the top guys in the league. Meanwhile, you have teams like the Rangers, for example, who rely heavily on Igor Shesterkin to cover up other flaws. It's almost like the opposite, right? So essentially, I think the goaltending will be a question mark, but if it was a different team, I would have more concerns because of the way they play. The back end's going to be just as strong and dynamic as possible. On top of the 6D there, you've got McDermott as well in the mix, the big, strong, physical guy, if they want to add that into the mix too. Certainly up front, like I said, they'll miss Landeskog in the beginning of the year, but they should have no problems treading through and kind of, keeping up here with the pace. Nathan MacKinnon, it'd be nice to see him get through a full season a little bit healthier and not miss time. I think he's capable of 100-point season and winning a Hart Trophy. Of course, he signed a mega extension not long ago, becoming the league's highest paid player when that kicks in next year. So certainly will pass Connor McDavid as the highest paid player. And to me, I know there's a lot of debate over it. I personally think with the cap going up as much as it's expected to in the next 3 to 4 years, that contract will be worth it. Part of that is certainly to make up for what he didn't make on the last one. I think that's fair to say. But I also think that Nathan MacKinnon still has more to give and can certainly add some more individual accomplishments to the mix here. But I think a lot of it for him is just staying healthy. There's been a few years he definitely would have been in the mix for the Hart Trophy had he not missed time. So I think sometimes he gets a little bit undervalued that way, but MacKinnon is that good in my opinion and can certainly, along with Cale Makar, lead this team to yet another Stanley Cup. They're going to be very interesting to watch. That much we know for sure. Very exciting. Like I said, a big-time puck possession team who's going to obviously have a different look this year with a few different vets not with them any longer, but certainly I think they'll definitely be near the top of their division. They'll definitely be a threat in the playoffs. Do they win the Stanley Cup? It's a big question. It's hard to predict. I think they'll be in the mix. They'd be probably one of about a half dozen teams that I'd be willing to put money on to say that I think they have a real good chance. So let me know your thoughts on the Avalanche. Can they repeat? Down in the comments, and we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around for the rest of this series. We have plenty more teams left to cover. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.